Be aware, the current music industry no longer knows how to record compact cassette tapes. Yes, I have evidence from before and from now. Yes. So let's understand how to record a cassette tape like a pro to get the best possible sound experience. Does the cassette player make a difference? Yes, but less than you might think if you record and listen correctly. Hi, it's Emenery here back to merge two topics that I love to talk about: mastering and compact cassette tapes. This cassette here from Paramore. I bought it directly from Warner Music in the UK, and you know how it sounds. It sounds like pirate tape, like those from the 80s and the 90s, which you bought in dubious place to purchase cassette tapes. Yes, the quality is terrible. Noise is very present, and this cover is, I don't know what to talk about it. I don't know. Empty. The back of the cover is empty. If we were in the 90s, you would be sure it was a fake cassette, pirate compact cassette. But no, it's an original compact cassette made in 2023, which is why it's very sad. And I go further, some fake compact cassettes from the 80s and 90s probably had even higher quality than this cassette, which cost me $30, almost $30. And guys, the Paramore band is one of the most relevant bands in the world today in terms of importance to the music industry. This album, This Is Why, was released in 2023 and won the Grammy. So putting such material for sale in the official Warner store is a massive disrespect for everybody: the artist, the consumer, for the mix engineer, for the master engineer, for everybody. I mainly prefer the remix version of this album. I even recommend you to purchase the digital version of the This Is Why. R.E. This Is Why is the name. But I do not recommend you buy any original compact cassettes of present time. I don't know you, but I can get good examples since, I don't know, the end of the 90s. And why do I think the music industry unlearned how to make good quality cassettes? I grew up listening to satisfactory cassette recordings in the 80s and 90s, and I didn't have any hi-fi equipment to listen to music then. And now, take a look at these covers. They have all the lyrics here, yes, and pictures. The experience of manipulating these covers differs entirely from manipulating this one. Shame on Warner Music faces, please. I will soon make a video teaching you how to make perfect covers for cassette tapes. So sign up now to get this precious information when the video gets published. Okay? Oh, wow. Yes, it's it happened now. I got this broken. I don't know. But, oh my god. This is from the 90s. This is from the 90s. I bought last year, sealed here in Portugal from a guy that had a music store in the 90s, and he had these two tapes for sale for a long of time, and I bought as a new old stock. Speaking of equipment, my current cassette player is nothing too much, as I commented in the last video. On that video, I comment in depth about the TAC Double 1200 and explain why cassette players will never be like the gems of the 80s and the 90s. And why were the cassette recordings made in the 80s and 90s still better than those made today? Is it a matter of technical competence? In a way, yes, but it is also a matter of recording technology. The cassette players have changed dramatically, and I think no one has explained this change to the music industry. Understand one thing, Warren. In the past, every song in every music studio had mastering done on a reel of magnetic tape. It was not a cassette tape, but a half inch or a quarter inch tape reel used in a player with a more giant magnetic head and higher sound quality. The master tape could even have a different chemistry. Each brand had its unique secret formula to get the best possible sound. In fact, it didn't make much sense to discuss tape type for the studio recording scope because the studio equipment allowed specific adjustments of the frequency and voltage to the bias to record and play the tape. However, someone with a minimal knowledge of electronics was needed to operate those analog and complex gears. The adjustments needed to be modified each time the tape was changed in the studio equipment. Fine tuning had to be done constantly to always get the best sound because one tape was always different from another. Welcome to the analog world. Understand what the process was like for mastering cassette tapes in the past. The music studio usually recorded the album on a quarter-inch tape reel using the most accurate recording equipment possible, a Studer A80 or an Ampex ATR 102, to make the compact cassettes. That mastering tape was placed to play in a loop to copy from it and record the contents several times in sequence in an even large reels of tape, but with a width of an 80 of an inch, which is the width of the cassette tapes. Yes, that giant tape reel was cut to the size of an album and automatically inserted into a compact cassette by another equipment made for that. That is, cassettes from the past were not converted from one media to another. They were almost identical magnetic copies of the mastering tape reel. I say almost identical because the mastering tape was of better quality. If the mastering tape had been made using a different chemical formula, it would have been no problem because there were individual adjustments for the mastering tape that played the contents and the cassette's giant inch tape reel. It seems simple and obvious, no? But since almost all music studios have completely converted their analog process into digital ones, it's difficult to find people who understand both words well, analog and digital process, to prevent aberrations like this one can happen. Yeah. And just out of curiosity, all this devotion of the music industry to digital music production began in 1999 after the release of the song Living La Vida Loca by Rick Martin. Actually, after the album's sales success. This was the first album on which the producers publicly declared that all the tracks had been recorded, mixed, and digitally mastered using Pro Tools, a newly released software at that time. From there, almost all music studios retired their expensive multi-track reel-to-reel recorders because making music with software and a computer was much cheaper and faster. And just to explain better, some studios already used Pro Tools before the Rick Martin's album. However, the studios were ashamed to reveal that they did everything or something in the digital domain because the labels still rated digital music as worse at the time. Nowadays, few music studios use magnetic tape reel-to-reel gear in their process. Everything is more uncomplicated in the digital audio domain, with almost no limitations. However, cassette tapes have many limitations: frequency limitations, noise problems, saturation problems, and problems arising from the recording equipment itself, which may be maladjusted, for example. how do you convert a song from perfect digital media to imperfect analog media? Hmm? Can you play the song on an excellent DAC like the file K11R2R that I already commented in another video? This DAC helps, but it is not enough. Before considering the equipment you will use to convert from digital to analog, you must modify your digital audio file. A digital audio file was designed and mainly mastered to be played on a digital device rather than an analog device. This also seems obvious, but people need more knowledge about the analog world to create clarity in their minds. And you can find it on this channel. Please subscribe to this channel now. I will wait a few seconds. Come on. And push the like button, please, for this video. Because that's how the YouTube algorithm works. Otherwise, it does not spread the word. You know. Thank you. So let's go. Just to fix, audio mastered in digital only plays well in digital equipment. And to remaster your audio, I recommend you using the Nerd Mixtape software. Launched in 2023 and available for Windows and macOS in the respective app stores. I paid 30 euros for it, almost the same price of this thing, but the amount will obviously differ depending on and when you were. What can be done with it? The first thing you can do with this software is adjusting volume levels between the digital standards of your audio, digital, and your analog equipment. Bear in mind the cassette tape to be recorded. That is, we can make the 0 dB FS of our digital system equal or very close to the 0 decibels of our entire analog set. To better understand this difference, consider dynamic range, the maximum variation between the most significant and the most negligible volume of sound, and consider 16-bit digital audio. This resolution is perfectly possible to reproduce in any modern DAC. With 16 bits, we have 96 decibels in the dynamic range in both digital and analog domains. However, a cassette player and the compact cassette tape produce a lot of magnetic noise, which reduces the useful dynamic range or the signal to noise ratio. Considering only the cassette player for the TX, we would have 59 decibels according to its specification. However, according to this modern RTM cassette compact cassette tape specification, the SNR is only close to 48 decibels, which is exactly half of 96 decibels that equate to 60 bits. But be careful, that doesn't mean it would be enough to use 80 bits audio to record a cassette tape. No, it doesn't work like that. Make sure to distinguish the digital distortion caused by the lack of resolution in bits with this small dynamic range on a compact cassette tape. In theory, the bit resolution of a compact cassette tape is infinite because it is a continuous signal. This small value of the signal to noise ratio on the tape means that the noise will be noticeable and probably at a higher volume than any sound recorded below the volume of minus 48 decibels. It is essential to minimize the dynamic range of your audio and increase the volume as much as possible. This will help ensure that the recorded sound on the tape is as distant as possible from the natural noise volume. We will achieve this with the help of the Mixtape Nerd software. Note that this software also organizes your audio files based on music order and the durations of the tape's A and B-sides. Here, in the tape length option, you define the total duration of the tape you have, that is, the sum of the two sides, as well as the duration of the protective plastic at the beginning and the end of the tape, so the software will know the delay necessary not to try to play something before the magnetic part actually begins. In fit options, you can adjust silence time, fade and crossfade between tracks. Thus, you don't need to edit your audio to make these inserts or make a whole file for the entire site. In AutoFit, if you do not care about the order of the sounds to be recorded, you can automatically reorganize them to make the best use of the tape duration time. But if, for example, you care about the order of only some songs and not to others, you can use the anchor option for the specific songs that you do not allow to change places. So AutoFit will change places only those not marked with the anchor. You can also apply specific adjustments to each track if your content is very different from the others. Now we need to calibrate the volume levels between the analog and digital systems. There is this level wizard option that you can start using the actions menu. The software will first ask questions about your cassette tape, where you will tell what type it is and how good it is. If you are using the RTM, it's a type 1 and its quality is more for modest option, because in the past we had better type 1 compact cassette tapes. You must also set whether your cassette recorder has 2 or 3 heads. With 3 heads, it is possible to make a finer adjustment because you get the sound directly from the tape, monitoring the tape. In the next step, you need to mark where the Dolby symbol is located in your recorder's level bar. If it does not exist, you have this option to check. In the TX 1200, supposedly, this symbol refers to the level of volume Dolby. Then the software will ask you which normalization method you prefer. I will explain this part better in a little while, but for now, mark LUFS, LUFS. Then the software will ask you to connect an audio output from the computer or the audio output from your DAC connected to the computer to the cassette recorder. By clicking here, the software will emit a constant noise of 400 Hz. Then you will need to adjust the volume gain of the recorder and or preamp until the volume level of your player is 0 decibels. If your recorder has 2 heads, you can directly monitor only the sound of the RCA input. But, as I said, if your recorder has 3 heads, you can directly monitor the recording on the tape and thus have the correct levels. And that's it. Your analog system is almost calibrated with digital. We still need to adjust this analog level above 0 decibels and improve this lower volume level of the analog. Both limits depend on the compact cassette tape you are going to use. In the case of the RTM, we already know from the datasheet that its SNR is at least 48 decibels, so our minimum volume must be minus 48 decibels. And the maximum volume is revealed by the tape's specification. More specifically, MOL, in the case of the RTM, is 2.2 decibels. If you record a sound with a greater volume than this value on the tape, you distort the signal and hardly be able to erase it from the tape because you have gone beyond the magnetic limit supported by the tape. To ensure that we will never extrapolate this value, I suggest you leaving at most 1.8 decibels above 0 decibels. Of course, in the case of RTM Type 1 cassette tape. In a moment, I will comment on the last necessary calibration. Yes, there is one more calibration. But first, I need to explain all the possibilities of transformation that this software allows you to do globally and at the individual level per track in your audio files. The first transformation is precisely how to normalize the volume of the audio. That is, a transformation that rises the volume to the maximum in digital terms, digital spec, digital domain. Of course, you can choose not to normalize if you have already done this on your audio with another software. But here you can normalize, for example, using the peak normalization. You can normalize from the maximum peak with this peak raised to 0 dBFS. The rest of the signal would receive the same gain that this maximum peak received to reach up to 0 dBFS. With the option Keep Peak Normalization, it will rise up to 0 dBFS, not a single point, but the part of the sound that contains several points that repeat with the same intensity and then apply the same gain to the rest of the signal. And so there may be isolated peaks that exceed 0 dBFS, causing some or many saturations or distortions in your audio. In the tests I did with music, I noticed that this normalization makes the signal very easy to distort if you are at the tape's highest volume limit. The next possibility is LUFS normalization, is the most modern way to normalize the volume of an audio file because the gain will be according to the amount of energy contained in each part of the audio. This prevents or drastically reduces distortion due to excessive gain. For now, this has been my choice when it comes to normalizing. And the last form to normalize is the VU normalization, which would be closer to an analog normalization. It sounds similar to the key peak normalization, but for me, VU sounds better than the key peaks or distort less than the key peak normalization. In summary, my suggestion to normalize your audio is LUFS or peak if it's music. If it is just voice, it's possible that key peak or VU sounds better and doesn't saturate the signal. The second way to transform your audio with this software is using compression. This is the most important transformation to make because here the idea is to raise all the sounds that are too low to a slightly higher volume so that all the music is at a volume above the noise of the tape. The first option is DALC, a fast compression that makes any very low sound loud enough. But for me, this compression destroys the music by reducing its dynamic range too much, leaving it flattened, and for me too boring. However, it can work well for voice recordings. For me, DXL compression is the best compression for music because it does not act so quickly or so slowly, and in the same way does not exaggerate the volume gains, maintaining an excellent dynamic range, and it can also work well for voice with a more natural result. Lastly, soft knee compression would be the slowest and with the least gain. In my tests, I didn't get good results with it. Maybe it sounds better for lower volume recordings because I was always in the maximum volume. The third possible transformation refers to the equalization of bias. Here it only makes sense to use if you have converted an analog sound from a Type 1 tape and want to record on a Type 2 tape. The equalization for cassette Type 4 would be equal to cassette Type 2, which is 70 microseconds, and cassette Type 1 would be equal to 120 microseconds. The Nakamichi brand recorders had an even more specific equalization that can be transformed here as well. So you can transform the Nakamichi version to another one. And for the last and most controversial transformation, we are going to need to calibrate one more thing: the Dolby level of your cassette player. There's a Dolby symbol, or in the case of the TIAC, a symbol that looks like the Dolby logo, which indicates what would be the difference, if any, of the voltage level that Dolby calibrated to be 0 decibels to apply its famous noise reduction algorithms. I mean, back then it was analog integrated circuits from Dolby, not algorithms. But in this case, in this software, we have emulations in algorithms, almost identical to those circuits. Noise reduction Dolby B and noise reduction Dolby C. In addition, DBX noise reduction circuits are emulated as well. It's only necessary to calibrate levels for the use of Dolby type encoding. For that, you click on Call and tell what the difference in decibels is between 0 decibels and the Dolby symbol on your equipment. If you did that wizard in the beginning, it will already have some value. Suppose your player has a lower resolution view, like in this one in the TIAC. I suggest you leave the recommended value. And if you are using the TIAC W1200, it only makes sense to encode your audio with the option DBIB for noise reduction, and then play the tape with the noise reduction option engaged. And just to be clear, playing a cassette tape with this option engaged without having encoded the sound with double B noise reduction before makes no sense. This encoding works as follows. There are gains between 1 kHz and 10 kHz frequency. Then in the decoding between 1 kHz and 10 kHz, you have a decrease of the volume in the same proportion. This is done to filter out the hiss noise without filtering out part of the music. Otherwise, if the music is not encoded, this option will remove part of the sound. Okay, this video is very long, but I know you want to check the recording examples that I did, and because of that, there is another video with all my recordings using the Nerd Mixtape, and it's here. Click here to watch it. Of course, like this video before.